Hey guys, my name is Jason with Mount Baker Mining and Metals, and on today's video we're going to be smelting down some silver from some of this old film canister stuff. I'm going to be using this crucible, and we'll be putting it in this KO wool furnace, smelting it down, pouring it into a big cone mold, and collecting our silver. And this is old film waste. The solution comes through here. There's typically an iron mesh in here like steel wool. And as the silver solution comes in, it replaces silver onto the steel mesh and the iron goes into solution. So hopefully we can get quite a bit of silver out of this stuff. I've got it dried out as best I can. I've got some of that stuff chunked up here, and you can see it's kind of crystalline. It's a little bit damp, so I'm going to heat it up slow so we don't get a bunch of gas and water vapor coming off real fast. This is just anhydrous borax, so I'm going to mix that in. I've done some tests on this, and I don't need very much. So I'm just going to layer some as I go. I got a little bit on the bottom there. I'll throw some of that in there, and we'll get her filled up to, 2/3 or 3/4 of the way full. This out of the way. This part. Like I said, we'll grab it low. This comes down, lift it up, go. And then you just hold it right there and I'll pour it. Glad we had that rod over the top.
You ain't kidding. Well, we lost the brick.
Yeah, I think we'll be all right.
You want to just set it on the concrete?
No, it'll pop the concrete. We'll set it right back down there. Let her go. There we go. Slide that brick. Can you slide that brick under there, kind of, maybe? There we go. My bucket doesn't melt here. So yeah, there's your hot lava.
Yeah. So it's actually turning into black glass right now.
Yeah, as it cools, it'll turn into a black glass. And all our silver's right down there at the bottom of that cone. It'll take a little while to cool, obviously. But when it's cool, then I'll just tip the whole thing over right on the concrete. And the glass will probably shatter. And at the bottom, there'll be our silver pyramid.
About an hour to cool.
Probably. So for our next batch here, I run it through the jaw crusher. It's all about 1/4 inch minus. And I've mixed in anhydrous borax again. That's all I'm using for a flux. It's just borax. It's about 1 part film residue to 1 part borax. All right, we got our 2 blocks and our number 5 crucible here. We're gonna bring them over to our smaller furnace. Set them down in there, and we'll get those firing away. And I'm just gonna pour them in a bucket of water. All right, guys, couple of interesting things here. This is the metal I poured into the water, and it's obviously not silver. It's kind of a dull matte brown, and I think that's because of the iron in there. And the whole reason we're doing this is because iron is pretty hard to cupel out. It takes a lot of lead or bismuth to oxidize the iron and get it out of there into the cupel. And so I'm trying to get rid of as much iron as I can before I go to cupel. So let's try and put some of this in muriatic acid and see if we can dissolve some of that iron out. But another interesting thing that happened is after I poured that metal into the water, there was still some junk in the bottom of that crucible. And there's definitely metal down there. And I wanted to make sure I got all my silver out. And so what I did is I added some lead to that to reduce the melting point of whatever was down there. And I think it was just a higher iron content, and it wasn't melting because I didn't have my temperature really high. So I added a little bit of lead, got it all melted down, and so poured a second batch into some water. So I've got 2 of these. I'm going to add muriatic acid to both of them. We'll do a little test and see if it works. and see if we can get a lot of that iron out before we have to cupel it with lead or bismuth. I did a little test here. This is muriatic acid, and I've got a couple pieces in there. And it doesn't seem like there's any reaction happening at all. And my hope was that there was enough iron on the surface that it would fizz and bubble and get some of that iron out of there. But it's really not doing anything. And what I think is happening, and this is good news actually, is that the iron content is so low that it's mostly silver with a little bit of iron. So let me go back to the drawing board here and see if I can figure out a way to get more of that iron out of there before I put it in the cupel. All right, well, what I'm going to try next, since that muriatic acid didn't work, is I've got all our cornflake silver in a number 12 crucible, and I've added a whole bunch of potassium nitrate, and I'm going to try and oxidize some of the iron out of there. And I don't really know what's going to happen. I've got actually quite a bit of material in here. This is going to release a whole bunch of oxygen when it gets up to temperature, and I don't know if this is going to just boil over or what. I literally don't have anything else in here other than potassium nitrate. I may need to add some borax after it gets up to temperature. But we'll see what happens here when I get this heated up. And again, this is just to drive off that iron that's in there and try and get as much out as we can before we put it in our cupel. All right, guys, let's see what we got here. So there's our metal block. Let's get her weighed and see what we got here. All right, here's our block. We started with about 1.1 kilograms worth of stuff. We're currently at 1.3, and I've added about 400 grams of lead. So our total loss so far is about 200 grams. I'm expecting that was from iron loss from our oxidation and stuff that we did. So now we got to take this and get our pure silver out of it, get rid of the lead, get rid of the rest of the iron. So we'll make a cupel, and we'll get this thing cupelling and try and refine it into pure silver. All right, I'm going to set up our furnace. Now, instead to be a smelting furnace, it's going to be a cupelling furnace. And this is literally just a wrap of kale wool with some baling wire around it to hold its shape. And I can take it off, move it around. But right now I'm going to take out our bricks. I'm going to get some Portland cement, and I'm just going to make a little dished concave bowl here out of Portland cement, and that's going to absorb the lead oxide when it gets molten and starts running off that bead, and you'll see all this in a minute. But I got to make my dish first of Portland cement to start absorbing those oxides that we're going to create. So there's not a lot of finesse here. I really just need a bowl shape. I'm not going to use any water. I'm going to try and keep it all dry. Okay, there it is. We'll see if this works. That looks like it'll hold about a kilogram of silver. We're gonna find out. Let me go get our block and we'll put her in there and see what she looks like. Okay, there we go. I think we have plenty of capacity for that block when it melts down. So we'll get her, I'll put the furnace back together here and we'll get her fired up. We're going to get it up to about 1800 degrees or so. And this is all going to melt down into a puddle. The lead and any other base metals in here are going to oxidize and they're going to start to roll off the top of our puddle as little, they'll look like raindrops kind of. And the Portland cement absorbs them. But it's the metal it's impervious to the metal. So the metal button will stay there. All the oxides will go into this Portland cement cupel we've made. And when it's all done and hard, we'll have our pure silver button. So there's a little silver wafer down there, and this was not as easy as I thought it was going to be. You can see all the little beads of silver around the edge. There was a huge amount of iron in there, and it took me forever to get the iron oxide scraped off, to get the lead exposed, to start driving the lead oxide and any other little base metals that were in there. And so I had to take my little skimmer, and I was skimming lead oxide all over the place, and I was kind of splashing, and there's a big chunk there, and there's a big chunk there. So the lead oxide actually made the iron oxide made a real chore for me there. And I've got it over here. This is how much I scraped off, and what I noticed is, when it was first coming off, it was just black and gooey and real hard to deal with. But as I got closer and closer to getting the skin off and having the lead exposed, it started turning yellow, and that's a good indication you're getting close to the lead, because the lead oxide is yellow. And so I knew I was getting close there, and once I exposed the lead, it started driving and going. But I've got about 300 grams of iron oxide here mostly. And what I'm going to try and do is smelt this now, because hopefully all the iron's oxidized. I'm going to use some borax and a little crucible, because there's still, you might be able to see on this piece, there's still little silver beads caught up in there. I don't think there's much. There's probably more stuck on that cupel than is in here. But just to be thorough, and I'm curious, I want to see how much silver is stuck in this iron oxide that I scraped off. So we'll get that going. I'll pull out our silver wafer here, get it weighed, and you know, all these little beads around the edge I can pick out and try and get them recovered. There's not $5 worth of silver little beads that I splashed around, so it's not that big of a deal. But we'll get it pulled out, cooled down, and see how much silver we got. So I've pulled our silver out of there, and the nice part when doing this is all the lead oxide, the litharge, actually bonds the cement together. So when you go to pull it out, you pull out all the contaminated cement, and all this is still just Portland cement. I can actually reuse that. I can pack a little more in there and do another cupel. Over here, you can see what came out, and here's a cross section of what that looks like, and that silver wafer sitting, you know, right here on top, and then the lead oxide has permeated into the Portland cement down there, maybe an inch. All right, there's our used up cupel. Here's our little silver wafer. There's still some junk in the back. I'm going to take this and melt this down and pour it into our cone mold to get it nice and cleaned up, and so we can get it weighed and get an accurate rate on it. A lot of people ask me, can you recover the lead from this? You know, how do you get the lead out? How do you dispose of it? It's really pretty easy. You can crush it up a little bit, get it small. You mix in some borax and some carbon, and the carbon reduces all the lead oxide back down to lead, and this all the cement goes into the slag, and you can recover all the lead, a little bit of silver, and you can reuse the lead as a collector metal over and over and over again that way by just reducing the lead with carbon. All right, I got our three things in here. I've got the silver and a little bit of borax down the bottom of that crucible there. I've got our iron oxide skimmings from the cupel. And then I've got our Portland cement with a bunch of those little silver beads in it with some borax, and that has borax and a little bit of soda ash in it. All right, guys, so here's two kind of interesting things. Here's a block I got out of the cupel with all those little silver beads. I smelted that down with some borax and soda ash, and I got this little button here in our cone mold. Weighs about 50 grams. I suspect it's about half to a third lead by weight, because I was stirring it with an iron rod, and I could see little lead beads starting to reduce as I stuck my iron rod in. And then this one is from the oxide stuff that I scraped off the cupel, and it's really pretty interesting. I had 300 grams to start with. I ended up with 250 grams of this stuff, and it looks like it's lead and iron mixed. It's not pure lead. It's not soft. It's real brittle and hard. So if you guys have any idea, that should have been pretty well oxidized, and I should have scraped that off, and it should have been absorbed by the borax. I'm not quite sure why it was still in the metallic iron form. But let me know what you guys think. And now we'll go take a look at the silver block. All right, here's our silver block. There we go, turned out real nice. And here's our silver block all cleaned up. Let's see how much he weighs. Right about 750 grams. So that's pretty cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.